In Hollywood, the brightest lights often hide the darkest dangers. Some infections begin quietly, disguised as harmless pain or a simple fever, until they ignite a deadly chain reaction. Tonight, we reveal the stars who never saw the silent killer approaching, and the final hours that changed everything.
Number 1. Jim Henson. In the final days of his life, Jim Henson still moved with the energy and warmth that had defined his entire career. He had spent decades creating a universe of characters that felt more alive than most human beings on screen. And to millions, he was the gentle soul behind childhood itself. But on May 14, 1990, a quiet storm began inside his body. A storm he didn't recognize or perhaps refused to acknowledge, believing his strength and optimism would be enough to overcome it. He told friends he simply had the flu, nothing more, nothing serious. For 2 days, he continued working, planning new projects, smiling through interviews and refusing medical care. No one imagined danger was quietly spreading with every passing hour. By the time he collapsed and was brought to New York Hospital, the infection had already taken hold. His lungs were filling with fluid. His body was fighting an invisible enemy that had grown far more powerful than anyone realized. Doctors discovered he was battling a rare and aggressive infection caused by Group A streptococcus, a bacteria so fast and destructive that even minutes mattered. As the infection spread to his bloodstream, it triggered toxic shock syndrome, a violent, overwhelming form of sepsis. His immune system, desperate to fight the bacteria, began to attack his own organs instead. Machines surrounded him, alarms echoed through the room, and medical teams worked with urgency, but the infection had already moved faster than medicine could. His organs began failing one after another, like lights going out in a house that had once been full of music, laughter, and imagination. In the early morning of May 16th, Jim Henson lost consciousness and slipped away at just 54 years old. The shock was immediate and worldwide. To millions, he had seemed invincible, a creator of endless hope, kindness, and joy. His death exposed a truth few understood, that sepsis can hide behind what looks like a simple fever or a mild flu, turning fatal before anyone can react. In the years that followed, medical professionals repeatedly used his story as a warning about the silent speed of bloodstream infections. Yet beyond the tragedy, his legacy continued to grow. The worlds he built, the Muppets, Sesame Street, remained alive for generations. His characters taught kindness, curiosity, and imagination, even as the man behind them became one of the most heartbreaking examples of how quietly sepsis can steal a life. Jim Henson's final hours were a reminder that even the brightest lights can fade without warning.
Number 2. Patty Duke. In her final days, Patty Duke, the Oscar-winning actress whose talent had dazzled audiences since childhood, believed she was facing nothing more than a stubborn stomach pain. She had survived battles far harsher in life, the pressures of early fame, the turbulence of mental illness, and decades of public scrutiny. To her family, she was strong, resilient, and always capable of pushing through discomfort. But on March 28, 2016, that pain deepened into something sharper, something that refused to fade. Her loved ones rushed her to a hospital in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, unaware that a silent and deadly cascade had already begun inside her body. Doctors discovered a rupture in her intestine, a tear small enough to be invisible from the outside, but catastrophic once bacteria spilled into her abdomen. Within hours, those bacteria spread into her bloodstream. What started as localized infection became sepsis, a medical emergency that moves with terrifying speed. Patty's blood pressure dropped, her heart fought to stabilize, and her body struggled under the weight of overwhelming inflammation. Physicians administered antibiotics, fluids, and every measure modern medicine could offer. For a brief moment, there was hope, the kind that families cling to when the outcome is unclear, when survival feels possible. But sepsis rarely gives back what it takes. The infection spread faster than her body could fight it. Her organs weakened, one system after another beginning to fail. Her family stood by her side, watching a woman who had outlived Hollywood's storms lose the battle against a microscopic enemy that had struck without warning. On March 29th, surrounded by loved ones, Patty Duke passed away at the age of 69. The news stunned her fans, not only because she was a legend, but because the word sepsis seemed unfamiliar, almost hidden behind medical language that softened the true cause. In the days following her death, experts explained what so few understood, that sepsis is often the real reason behind sudden medical decline after an infection. It is the body's own response, an overreaction so violent that it destroys what it tries to protect. Patty's passing became a turning point in public awareness. Health organizations shared her story, urging people to take symptoms like fever, severe pain, confusion, and rapid heartbeat seriously. Her legacy expanded beyond film and advocacy. She became a symbol of why sepsis must never be ignored. Patty Duke lived a life of extraordinary highs and painful lows, but she faced the world with honesty and courage. Her final chapter revealed a danger millions still overlook, a silent force that can turn a simple infection into tragedy. Her story continues to save lives by teaching others what she never had a chance to know.
Number 3. Tanya Roberts. In the final week of 2020, Tanya Roberts still appeared vibrant and full of life. She had been posting videos to fans, sharing updates, smiling, speaking with the same warmth that had made her beloved for decades. As a former Bond girl, a star of Charlie's Angels, and a familiar face from that 70s show, she seemed ageless, active, healthy, and far from the image of someone in danger. But just after Christmas, everything changed. On December 24th, she suddenly collapsed at home in Los Angeles. Her partner, terrified, called emergency services as she struggled to breathe. What looked like exhaustion or shortness of breath was in fact the beginning of a deadly cascade happening deep inside her body. At the hospital, doctors discovered the truth. A urinary tract infection had spread beyond her kidneys and entered her bloodstream. This small, common infection, one millions experience each year, had turned into something far more dangerous. Bloodstream infections trigger sepsis, a violent chain reaction where the immune system misfires and begins attacking the body itself. Tanya was placed on oxygen. Antibiotics were started immediately. For a short while, her condition seemed stable, even improving, just enough for friends to feel a spark of hope. But sepsis rarely gives second chances. Without warning, her blood pressure dropped. Her organs began shutting down one by one. Sepsis had overrun her system, cutting off oxygen, poisoning tissues, and creating a situation even the best medical teams struggled to reverse. Days passed with uncertainty, confusion, and heartbreaking miscommunication. Some news outlets mistakenly reported her death before it was confirmed, causing even more anguish for her loved ones. But on January 4th, 2021, the truth arrived. Tanya Roberts had passed away at the age of 65, taken not by chronic illness, not by long-term disease, but by an infection that escalated faster than anyone expected. Fans around the world were stunned. Just days earlier, she seemed perfectly healthy, recording videos and interacting online. The suddenness of her death became a chilling reminder of how sepsis can turn a minor infection into a fatal crisis in a matter of hours. After her passing, health experts emphasized her story, explaining how urinary tract infections, often underestimated, can become life-threatening if untreated or undetected. They urged people never to ignore symptoms like fever, chills, weakness, or confusion. Tanya Roberts left behind a legacy of beauty, strength, and resilience. Her roles inspired generations, and her presence on screen captured both confidence and vulnerability. But her passing revealed something far bigger, that even in the modern world, an ordinary infection can still be deadly. Her story continues to raise awareness about the hidden danger she never saw coming. Number 4. Brian Dennehy. In the spring of 2020, Brian Dennehy was still the commanding presence audiences had admired for decades. His deep voice, towering frame, and unmistakable intensity had made him unforgettable in films like First Blood, Cocoon, and countless stage productions. Even in his later years, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had lived fully, worked endlessly, and earned every ounce of respect Hollywood gave him.
But behind that strong exterior, a quiet danger was forming, one that no one around him could see. In the days before his passing, he felt unusually weak and feverish. Those close to him assumed it was nothing more than a respiratory illness, something he would recover from with rest. Dennehy himself believed the same. Yet the infection inside him was moving silently, spreading beyond its initial source. As it entered his bloodstream, his body launched a desperate immune response, the kind that often signals the beginning of sepsis. Without obvious warning, his condition deteriorated. On April 15, 2020, emergency services were called to his home in New Haven, Connecticut. By the time help arrived, the infection had already overwhelmed his system. He suffered cardiac arrest, the final blow delivered by the cascading effects of sepsis, the same hidden enemy that claims thousands of lives each year before they even realize what is happening. News of his passing spread quickly, and tributes poured in from around the world. Colleagues spoke of his intelligence, his generosity, his precision as a performer. Many were shocked to learn that the cause was sepsis, a condition still widely misunderstood despite being one of the most dangerous medical emergencies. Fans recalled how vibrant he had seemed just months earlier, still reading scripts, still performing with remarkable power on stage. It was nearly impossible to imagine that a man of such enduring strength could fall so quickly. Medical experts later explained what few outside the healthcare world truly grasp, that sepsis often begins with symptoms that seem harmless, only revealing its full force when it is almost too late. Brian Dennehy's story echoed through the entertainment industry as a sobering reminder of this truth. His legacy, however, remains far larger than the circumstances of his passing. He left behind decades of acclaimed work, a reputation for excellence, and countless performances that continue to inspire new generations of actors. His final hours were quiet, but his impact never was. To the world, Brian Dennehy was a giant, and his loss revealed just how silently a hidden infection can bring down even the strongest among us.
Number 5. Bernie Mac. In the summer of 2008, Bernie Mac was still one of the most electrifying figures in comedy. His voice boomed with confidence, his presence filled every room, and his humor, raw, sharp, and unmistakably his, made him a legend, both on stage and on screen. Fans adored him for The Bernie Mac Show, for his unforgettable roles in films, and for the honesty he brought to every performance. But behind the scenes, he had been feeling unusually tired. Friends assumed it was exhaustion from work, something he had pushed through countless times before. Bernie himself brushed it off, believing he would bounce back quickly, just like he always did. But the discomfort grew into something more serious. He developed a fever, trouble breathing, and a weakness that didn't match his usual resilience. Doctors diagnosed him with pneumonia, a dangerous but treatable condition. He was admitted to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago, where his medical team began aggressive treatment. Antibiotics, oxygen support, and constant monitoring gave his loved ones hope. At first, there were signs of improvement, small moments where it seemed like Bernie was fighting his way back. But pneumonia carries a hidden danger, one many don't realize until it is too late. It can trigger sepsis. As the infection in his lungs spread and entered his bloodstream, his immune system responded with overwhelming force. Instead of protecting him, the response caused his blood pressure to crash, his organs to strain, and his body to slip into a downward spiral. Doctors worked tirelessly, placing him on a ventilator, administering medication to stabilize his circulation, and doing everything possible to control the inflammation tearing through his system. But sepsis moves unpredictably. Each hopeful sign was followed by another setback, another drop in strength, another organ beginning to fail. On August 9, 2008, Bernie Mac passed away at just 50 years old. For millions of fans, the news was impossible to accept. He had seemed unstoppable, a performer who had fought through hardship, poverty, and discrimination to become one of the most iconic entertainers of his generation. His death revealed a painful truth that even a simple lung infection, if left unchecked or unresponsive to treatment, can unleash a chain reaction the body cannot survive. After his passing, doctors used his case to educate the public about the risks of pneumonia and the speed at which it can progress to sepsis.
They explained that symptoms like confusion, extreme fatigue, rapid breathing, and sudden changes in heart rate should never be ignored. Bernie Mac's family, friends, and fans mourned, a man whose laughter had filled theaters, living rooms, and hearts around the world. He lived boldly, spoke honestly, and performed fearlessly, but his final battle was fought in silence against a force he never saw coming. His story continues to remind millions that sepsis is a hidden enemy capable of taking even the brightest voices far too soon.
Number 6. R. Lee Ermey. In the days leading up to his death, R. Lee Ermey, the former Marine drill instructor who became a Hollywood icon, still carried the unmistakable toughness that had defined him for decades. His performance as Gunnery Sergeant Hartman in Full Metal Jacket had cemented him as one of the most unforgettable figures in film history. Off-screen, he was just as disciplined, active, sharp, always moving, always working. So when he developed what he believed was a simple chest cold, he treated it like any inconvenience, something to push through, something unworthy of slowing him down. But pneumonia is a quiet enemy, especially for older adults. As the infection spread through his lungs, his breathing grew more difficult, though he continued to downplay the symptoms. He appeared at events, spoke with fans, and maintained the same confident humor that people loved him for. To those around him, he didn't seem like a man in danger. Yet inside his body, the infection was gaining ground. It reached his bloodstream, and the shift from pneumonia to sepsis began, a shift that often happens before anyone realizes what is unfolding. Sepsis moves with devastating speed. The inflammation triggered by the infection overwhelmed his system, causing his blood pressure to fall and starving his organs of oxygen. On April 15, 2018, he was rushed to a hospital in Santa Monica. Medical teams worked to stabilize him, but his condition deteriorated rapidly. The bacteria had already advanced too far, and the immune response, designed to protect him, was instead destroying the organs he needed to survive. News of his passing stunned both Hollywood and the military community. He had always seemed invincible, a man whose strength, discipline, and spirit defined everything he touched. Tributes poured in from veterans who saw him as a mentor, an advocate, and a symbol of unwavering dedication. Fans remembered his booming voice, his razor-sharp delivery, and the authenticity he brought to every role. Many were surprised to learn that the cause of death was complications from pneumonia that had progressed into sepsis, a medical emergency that often goes unrecognized until it is too late. After his death, doctors emphasized how dangerous respiratory infections can become, especially when ignored or dismissed. R. Lee Ermey's story became another reminder of how quickly sepsis can claim a life, even one built on discipline, resilience, and strength. He left behind a legacy larger than any character he played. His voice, his presence, and his commitment to those who served will be remembered for generations. But his final chapter revealed a truth few expect, that the strongest warriors can still fall to an invisible enemy that attacks without warning.
Number 7. Nick Cordero. In early 2020, Nick Cordero was at the height of his career, a rising Broadway star with a powerful voice, a Tony-nominated performance, and a reputation for generosity and warmth that made everyone around him feel seen. He was only 41 years old, strong, active, and full of plans for the future. But in late March, everything changed. What began as mild fever and shortness of breath quickly escalated into a medical crisis. Nick was admitted to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, and within days, he was placed on a ventilator. His family, watching from afar, hoped he would recover as they tried to understand how someone so young could decline so fast. But the infection inside him was relentless. Complications began to stack one after another. Doctors found blood clots forming in his legs, a dangerous sign that his body was fighting far more than a simple respiratory illness. In an attempt to save his life, surgeons were forced to amputate one of his legs, a heartbreaking decision, yet one they believed was necessary. Still, the infection continued spreading. His lungs suffered severe damage. His immune system, overwhelmed and exhausted, struggled to respond. And then came the turn no one wanted to hear: sepsis.
Sepsis does not discriminate by age. Once the infection enters the bloodstream, it releases a chain of inflammation that can destroy organs with terrifying speed. Nick's blood pressure dropped, his kidneys weakened, his body entered a cycle of improvement followed by sudden collapse, each step forward erased by a deeper setback. Through it all, his wife, Amanda Klutz, shared daily updates, rallying thousands of supporters who prayed, sent messages, and hoped for a miracle. But medicine has limits, and sepsis pushed Nick's body to a point even the strongest couldn't recover from. On July 5, 2020, after more than 3 months of fighting, Nick Cordero passed away. His death sent shockwaves through both the Broadway and Hollywood communities. Friends and colleagues spoke of his kindness, his positivity, and the joy he brought to every rehearsal room. That someone so vibrant, with no major health issues and so much life ahead could be taken by infection, stunned the world. After his passing, Amanda became a strong voice for awareness, reminding people that sepsis can strike anyone, regardless of age or strength. Medical experts highlighted Nick's case to show how quickly infection can escalate when it enters the bloodstream, and how even small symptoms should never be ignored. His story became a symbol of resilience, love, and the fragile line between health and crisis. Nick Cordero left behind a legacy of music, courage, and hope, and a powerful reminder of how silently and suddenly sepsis can steal a life.
Number 8. Charles B. Dean. In the summer of 2022, Charles B. Dean's career was rising fast. After years of modeling and acting, she had finally stepped into international recognition with her role in Triangle of Sadness, a film that not only won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, but positioned her as one of Hollywood's most promising new stars. She appeared confident, radiant, and ready for everything the industry was beginning to offer. To fans and colleagues, she was unstoppable. But on August 29, 2022, everything changed with terrifying speed. That morning, Charles B. began feeling unwell. Nothing dramatic at first, just discomfort, fatigue, a sense that something wasn't right. By the time she reached a hospital in New York, her condition had already worsened. Doctors quickly discovered she was suffering from bacterial sepsis caused by an unusual organism known as Capnocytophaga. The infection had entered her bloodstream and triggered a rapid, overwhelming immune response. Medical teams worked urgently, but within hours, her organs began to shut down. It happened so fast that even the professionals fighting to save her were stunned by the pace of the decline. Despite every effort, Charles B. Dean passed away later that day. She was only 32 years old. Her death felt impossible to comprehend. Just weeks earlier, she had been on red carpets, giving interviews, smiling brightly for cameras. The industry was celebrating her talent. She was preparing for new roles, and then suddenly, she was gone. But there was a heartbreaking detail that made her case even more tragic. Years earlier, Charles B. had her spleen removed after a serious car accident. Most people don't think about the spleen, yet it plays a crucial role in fighting certain bacteria. Without it, the body becomes far more vulnerable to fast-moving infections, the kind that can turn fatal in a matter of hours. Medical experts explain that individuals without a spleen must seek immediate care at the first sign of fever or infection because their risk of severe sepsis is dramatically higher. Charles B.'s story became a powerful reminder of this overlooked danger. Friends and colleagues mourned not only the loss of a gifted actress, but the loss of a life that had barely begun to blossom. She had just stepped into her moment, a moment that ended too soon. Tributes poured in from around the world, remembering her warmth, discipline, and the intensity she brought to every performance. Her death was a stark example of how fragile life can be, even for the young and healthy. Sepsis does not wait. It does not negotiate. It strikes quickly, quietly, and without mercy. And in Charles B. Dean's case, it took away a future that once looked limitless.
Number 9. Charlie Robinson. In the summer of 2021, Charlie Robinson was still remembered with warmth and admiration by millions of viewers. For decades, he had been a familiar face on television, most famously as the soft-spoken, quick-witted court clerk Mac Robinson on the long-running sitcom Night Court. His presence on screen was effortless, comforting, and genuine. Even in his 70s, he carried the same gentle charisma that had made him beloved since the 1980s. But behind the scenes, Charlie had been undergoing treatment for cancer. Doctors monitored him closely, and although the journey was difficult, he remained hopeful, even excited about future projects. No one imagined how quickly everything would change. During his hospital stay, an unexpected infection began developing inside his body. At first, it seemed manageable, the kind of complication many patients face during treatment. But infections do not always reveal their true danger until it's too late. In Charlie's case, the bacteria spread rapidly, entering his bloodstream and triggering the early stages of sepsis. The shift from routine complication to life-threatening emergency happened quietly, almost invisibly. Within hours, his blood pressure dropped. His organs struggled under the strain. Medical teams worked urgently to stabilize him, but sepsis moves with a speed that often outruns even the most skilled professionals. As inflammation surged through his system, his heart began to fail. On July 11, 2021, Charlie Robinson passed away at the age of 75. The official cause listed metastatic cancer, sepsis, and multiple organ failure, a combination that revealed just how violently the infection took hold. For those who knew him, the news was heartbreaking. Many had spoken with him recently and believed he was recovering. He had talked about new roles, about returning to work, even about the upcoming Night Court reboot. His optimism made the suddenness of his passing even more devastating. Tributes flooded social media. Co-stars remembered him as kind, humble, and fiercely talented. Directors recalled how he elevated every scene he touched, turning even simple dialogue into moments of genuine connection. Fans wrote about the comfort he brought into their homes for decades. Yet many were shocked to hear the word sepsis, unaware of how common and deadly it truly is, especially for patients with weakened immune systems. Doctors later emphasized an important lesson from Charlie's story. Cancer patients face a far higher risk of developing sepsis, even from minor infections. Their immune systems are more fragile, and what would be a mild illness for someone else can become fatal in hours. Recognizing early signs, fever, sudden weakness, confusion, rapid heartbeat can be the difference between recovery and tragedy. Charlie Robinson's passing marked the end of a remarkable career defined by sincerity, humor, and heart. He brought life to every character he played, leaving behind a legacy of joy and authenticity. And in his final chapter, he became a reminder of how swiftly and silently sepsis can claim a life, even under the watch of medical care.
Number 10. Jeff Conaway. In the final weeks of Jeff Conaway's life, those who loved him believed he was on the path to recovery. Best known for his role as Kenickie in Grease and as Bobby Wheeler on the hit series Taxi, Jeff had spent decades battling personal struggles while still delivering performances full of charm and heart. By 2011, he was trying to rebuild, reconnect, and stabilize his health. But in early May, everything took a sudden turn. He was found unconscious in his Los Angeles home and rushed to the hospital. What looked at first like a collapse from exhaustion or long-standing health issues was actually the beginning of something far more severe. Doctors discovered that Jeff was suffering from pneumonia, an infection that can hide its true danger until it's too late. The bacteria in his lungs spread rapidly, entering his bloodstream and triggering a full-body inflammatory reaction. The shift from pneumonia to sepsis is often silent, and by the time medical teams recognized the extent of the infection, it had already begun overwhelming his organs. Jeff was placed in a medically induced coma to give his body a chance to stabilize. Machines hummed around him, monitoring his lungs, his blood pressure, his failing systems. His family held on to hope, waiting for signs of improvement. But sepsis is unpredictable. Each day brought new complications, new organ stress, new battles his body struggled to fight. The inflammatory response damaged his tissues faster than medicine could repair them. His lungs weakened, his circulation faltered. Even with constant care, antibiotics, and life support measures, the infection had gained too much ground. After days without brain activity and no signs of recovery, his loved ones faced a devastating decision. On May 27, 2011, Jeff Conaway passed away at the age of 60. News of his death spread quickly,
and fans mourned the loss of the performer who had made his mark on some of the most iconic productions in Hollywood. The tragedy was compounded by the revelation that sepsis, not addiction, not long-term illness, was the true cause of his final decline. Many who remembered him as energetic, witty, and full of personality were shocked to learn that a lung infection had escalated so brutally. Medical experts used Jeff's story to highlight how pneumonia remains one of the leading causes of sepsis, especially in adults already dealing with other health conditions. They emphasized the importance of seeking prompt medical care for respiratory symptoms and of recognizing early warning signs like confusion, shortness of breath, or sudden drops in blood pressure. Jeff Conaway's legacy is one of talent, vulnerability, and unforgettable screen presence. He brought life to every character he played, the rebel, the dreamer, the friend everyone rooted for. His final chapter revealed how quickly a hidden infection can steal even the brightest personality. And today, his story continues to raise awareness about the silent, deadly progression of sepsis.
Number 11. Dushan Monique Brown. In March 2018, Dushan Monique Brown was still lighting up the set of Chicago Fire with her warmth, professionalism, and quiet strength. Known for her role as Connie, the loyal and steady assistant in Firehouse 51, she had become a beloved presence both on screen and behind the scenes. Her colleagues admired her discipline, her kindness, and the grounded energy she brought into every room. So, when she began feeling lightheaded and experienced chest discomfort, she did what many hardworking people do. She assumed it was stress, exhaustion, something that could be solved with rest. She visited a clinic where initial tests showed nothing alarming. She was told to go home and recover. But inside her body, an infection was developing faster than anyone realized. By the following day, her symptoms intensified sharply. She struggled to breathe, her chest tightened. Her body felt weak in a way that could no longer be ignored. She was rushed to a Chicago hospital where doctors began evaluating her in a race against time. What they found was terrifying. Sepsis had already set in. The infection, its source still unclear, had entered her bloodstream and triggered a rapid, overwhelming inflammatory response. Within hours, Dushan's condition shifted from serious to critical. Sepsis attacks without warning, especially when the signs mimic everyday illness. As her blood pressure dropped and her organs began to struggle, medical teams worked urgently with fluids, antibiotics, and life support measures, but the window to reverse the damage was painfully small. Her body, overwhelmed by the internal storm, could not recover. On March 23, 2018, Dushan Monique Brown passed away at just 49 years old. Her death stunned the Chicago Fire cast and crew. They had seen her only days earlier, full of her usual calm, dependable energy. Producers released statements honoring her as a bright, generous spirit who brought heart to every scene and connection to every colleague. Fans across the world mourned deeply, remembering the subtle power she brought to her character, a reminder that even supporting roles can leave profound impact. Medical experts later used her story to emphasize an important truth. Sepsis doesn't always announce itself clearly. Early symptoms can look like fatigue, flu, or anxiety. And when the source of infection is unclear, sepsis can progress with frightening speed, leaving little time for intervention. They urge the public to treat sudden severe symptoms seriously, especially when combined with fever, confusion, or intense pain. Dushan's passing became one of the clearest examples of how an infection that begins quietly can turn fatal within hours. She left behind not only a legacy of dedicated work, but a reminder to millions that listening to one's body and acting quickly can save lives.
Number 12. Christopher Cazenove. In March 2010, Christopher Cazenove, the distinguished British actor known for his refined charm and effortless elegance, began feeling unwell. To many viewers, he would forever be remembered as Ben Carrington from the iconic series Dynasty, the calm, composed counterbalance to the show's high-voltage drama. Off-screen, he carried himself with the same sophistication, gracious, soft-spoken, and immensely dedicated to his craft. So when he began experiencing fatigue and persistent illness, those close to him believed it was something temporary, something he would overcome with rest. But the truth was far more dangerous. Within days of his hospital admission, doctors discovered that what began as a minor infection had already entered his bloodstream. Bacteria were spreading rapidly, triggering septicemia, a severe, fast-moving form of sepsis. At first, there were moments of hope. Christopher experienced brief periods of improvement, enough for family and friends to believe he might recover. But sepsis rarely moves in a straight line. The illness fluctuated violently, giving small signs of progress only to strike back harder hours later. Over the following weeks, his organs grew weaker as inflammation spread throughout his body. Medical teams worked tirelessly, using antibiotics, oxygen support, and every method available to control the infection. Yet the battle was slipping beyond their reach. Sepsis had already gained too much ground, attacking vital organs faster than they could heal. On April 7, 2010, Christopher Cazenove passed away at the age of 64. News of his death brought sorrow to fans in both the United Kingdom and the United States. Co-stars remembered him as gracious, witty, and profoundly professional, a man who elevated every scene with quiet strength. Many were shocked to learn that septicemia was the cause, a reminder of how silently and rapidly the condition can escalate. Medical experts later reflected on his passing, explaining that bloodstream infections can arise from nearly any untreated or unrecognized infection. Early symptoms, chills, fever, rapid breathing, confusion, are often mistaken for minor illness, which allows bacteria to spread unchecked. Christopher's story became another painful reminder of how crucial early detection is, especially for infections that seem insignificant at first glance. He left behind a legacy defined by elegance, discipline, and unforgettable performances. His work on stage and screen showcased a rare blend of sophistication and emotional depth. And though his life ended under tragic circumstances, the memory of his talent endures, as does the lesson hidden in his final days, that sepsis is a silent danger capable of taking even those who appear strong, healthy, and full of life.
Number 13. Robert Treiber. In early 2025, Robert Treiber, the actor beloved for his witty, fast-talking role as Salmoneus in Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, and Xena, Warrior Princess, was still fighting with determination and hope. After years of battling leukemia and undergoing a stem cell transplant, he understood the fragility of his immune system, yet he never allowed it to define him. Friends described him as sharp, humorous, endlessly creative, and optimistic about the future. Even during treatment, he continued writing, interacting with fans, and sharing encouragement with others facing illness. But in late February, something quiet and deadly began to form inside his weakened body. Despite close medical supervision, a bacterial infection slipped past every defense his recovering immune system could offer. For most healthy people, this type of infection might have been manageable, but for someone recovering from a transplant, it was far more dangerous. The bacteria entered his bloodstream, triggering sepsis, a catastrophic complication that spreads with terrifying speed when the immune system is compromised. Doctors acted immediately, trying to stabilize him with strong antibiotics, oxygen therapy, and continuous monitoring. Yet the infection advanced faster than anyone expected. Sepsis began attacking his organs, causing inflammation that his recovering body was simply too fragile to withstand. Each hour became a battle between medicine and the cascade of damage spreading inside him. Loved ones stayed close, hoping for a sudden turn, praying for a miracle. But even the strongest will cannot always overcome a system already pushed beyond its limits. On March 12, 2025, Robert Treiber passed away at the age of 71. The news devastated fans around the world, especially those who had grown up watching him bring humor, heart, and vibrant personality to every scene. His character Salmoneus embodied charm, wit, and resilience,
traits that many said reflected the real man behind the role. Tributes poured in, remembering him as generous, brilliant, and kind. His colleagues shared memories of his sharp intelligence, his creativity, and the unmistakable spark he carried into every project. Medical experts later explained how transplant patients are among the most vulnerable to severe infections. Their immune systems, intentionally weakened to prevent rejection, often cannot fight bacteria that would pose little threat to others. Robert's story became a sober reminder of this reality, that even under careful medical care, sepsis can progress too quickly to stop. He left behind a legacy of imagination, humor, and authenticity. His work continues to inspire fans, and his passing highlights a truth many still overlook, that sepsis can strike hardest at those whose bodies are already fighting battles unseen.
Number 14. George Dzunza. In the summer of 2010, George Dzunza was still remembered fondly by film and television fans. Though he often played supporting characters, his presence was unmistakable. From Back to the Future to The Deer Hunter and dozens of television roles, he brought depth to every part he touched. He had the warmth of a gentle storyteller, but the screen presence of someone who understood human emotion on a deeper level. Those close to him said he was still active, still meeting fans at small conventions, still enjoying the steady admiration of people who grew up with his work. But in late July, he began feeling ill, a discomfort he assumed was nothing more than a seasonal bug. He continued pushing through the symptoms, a bit of fatigue, a little fever, a sense that something wasn't right, but not bad enough to cause alarm. Like so many, he saw these signs as temporary, something his body would fight off naturally. But infections don't always reveal their danger until it's too late. As the days passed, the illness inside him moved rapidly. The bacteria entered his bloodstream, silently triggering sepsis, the body's extreme overreaction to infection. And once this reaction begins, the clock starts ticking. By early August, his condition worsened dramatically. He was admitted to a hospital in Washington, Pennsylvania, where doctors discovered the infection had already spread far beyond its point of origin. His blood pressure dropped. His organs strained under the intense inflammation. Despite immediate treatment and aggressive medical intervention, the sepsis advanced too quickly. Within hours, it became clear that his body was losing the fight. Surrounded by family, George Dzunza passed away on August 9, 2010, at the age of 70. Friends and colleagues were stunned. Many had seen him recently and believed him to be in good spirits, even working on small projects. To them, sepsis was an unfamiliar term, something they associated with rare or extreme medical cases, not with someone who seemed healthy only a short time before. But doctors explained that older adults are particularly vulnerable. An infection that seems minor, a cough, a fever, a urinary issue, can spiral into sepsis with frightening speed if ignored. Tributes soon appeared across the entertainment world. Co-stars praised his generosity, his professionalism, and his quiet strength. Directors spoke of how he elevated scenes simply by being present. Fans remembered his subtle humor, his warmth, and the reliability he brought to every role. George Dzunza represented an era of hard-working performers who didn't seek the spotlight but enriched every story they joined. His passing became another reminder of how quickly sepsis can take hold, especially when early symptoms are dismissed or misunderstood. And though he is gone, the legacy he left, through decades of television and film, continues to honor the quiet, dedicated spirit that defined him.
Number 15. Conrad Brooks. In the final months of 2017, Conrad Brooks was living quietly in Martinsburg, West Virginia, surrounded by family and old friends. He had long since retired from the Hollywood spotlight, but to fans of classic B-movies, he remained a cherished figure. His work with legendary cult director Ed Wood in films like Plan 9 from Outer Space and Glenn or Glenda had made him an icon of a bygone era. Even in his 80s, he still wrote letters to admirers, attended small conventions, and embraced the strange, wonderful legacy he carried. Despite declining health and a long battle with prostate cancer, he kept his humor, his warmth, and his gratitude for the fans who never forgot him. But in late November, an infection began forming inside his already fragile body. At first, it seemed minor, the kind of illness older adults often face. No one realized the danger it carried. As the infection spread, it entered his bloodstream and triggered sepsis, a deadly chain reaction that overwhelms vital organs. For someone weakened by age and cancer, the threat was even greater. Within days, his condition deteriorated rapidly. Doctors fought to stabilize him, but the infection had moved too quickly. His blood pressure fell, his organs began to fail, and the inflammation caused by sepsis left him too weak to recover. On December 6, 2017, Conrad Brooks passed away at the age of 86. His death brought to a close one of the final chapters of Hollywood's cult film history. He was one of the last surviving actors from Ed Wood's eccentric universe, a world that had been mocked in its time, but later celebrated for its charm, earnestness, and creative ambition. Fans and film historians mourned his passing, remembering him as a kind, approachable figure who embraced his unusual place in cinema history with pride rather than embarrassment. Medical professionals reflected on his story, reminding the public that elderly patients, especially those battling chronic illness, face a significant risk of developing sepsis from infections that seem harmless at first. Early treatment is often the only chance to stop its rapid progression. In Conrad's case, the infection moved too swiftly, outpacing what medicine could offer. Yet, even in his final chapter, Conrad Brooks left behind something meaningful. A reminder that every performer, no matter how small their role or how unusual their filmography, can touch generations of viewers. His career, built on passion and persistence rather than fame, became a testament to the joy of storytelling, and his passing underscored a truth that connects every name on this list, that sepsis is a silent danger, one capable of ending a life before anyone sees it coming.